I grew up in Ohio, and in 2021, I was a second-year student at my local high school. I lived on campus because commuting from home every day wasn't feasible, and with COVID still lingering, most students stayed home. The dorms were mostly empty, and the few of us who lived there spent most of our time alone. Classes were online for the most part, and the in-person labs and assignments were sparse, leaving large stretches of the day where there was nothing to do but walk around the eerily quiet campus or scroll endlessly on my laptop. Life was monotonous, and honestly, a little isolating. I was broke, as most students are, living off what little money I could get from campus jobs, or the occasional care package from my family. Even simple things, like grabbing a snack from the vending machine, felt like an accomplishment. Most evenings, the dorm hallways were completely empty, the fluorescent lights flickering faintly above me as I walked to the cafeteria for a late meal. It was during one of those slow, quiet weeks in March that everything changed. The principal announced that volunteers were needed to clean out the old wing of the school. The wing had been closed for years after a minor fire damaged part of the floor. No one had been in there since, and it had gained a reputation among students as being off. People said it was haunted, that you could hear whispers and footsteps when no one was supposed to be there, that shadows moved along the walls if you weren't looking directly at them. I laughed it off, of course. Ghost stories are just ghost stories. Still, I signed up. It was extra work, yes, but it was better than sitting alone in my dorm all day. I grabbed a flashlight and a trash bag and headed to the wing. As soon as I stepped inside, the smell hit me: burnt wood, mold, and a thick layer of dust that hadn't been disturbed in years. The air felt heavy, stagnant, and the silence pressed down on me in a way that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. The hallway stretched far ahead, lined with broken lockers, overturned desks, and debris from years of neglect. It was so quiet that I could hear the soft crunch of dust under my shoes and the faint hum of the broken fluorescent lights above. I started clearing desks and stacking them near the doorway. The first 20 minutes passed without incident. Then, I thought I heard it, footsteps behind me, not mine. Slower, deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. I froze, holding my breath. The floors were old and creaky, sure, but this rhythm didn't match my own movements. My mind raced, trying to come up with a rational explanation. Maybe it was another student? No. Everyone else had left the campus early because of the online schedule. Maybe maintenance? But the school had been empty. Then, out of the corner of my eye, a shadow flickered across the far wall. My heart jumped. I spun around. Empty hallway. Nothing. Just peeling paint, broken lockers, and dust motes dancing in the beam of my flashlight. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was imagining things, but the unease lingered. I continued working, moving more slowly now, stacking desks carefully. That's when I noticed the janitor's cart. When I had first walked in, it had been near the entrance. Now it was several feet down the hall, almost as if it had moved closer while I wasn't looking. My pulse spiked. "Hello?" I called, my voice echoing down the long hallway. Silence. Then I heard it. A whisper so soft I thought I might be imagining it. "You shouldn't be here." I froze completely. The hair on my neck stood up. I wanted to run, but my feet felt rooted to the floor. Maybe it was just the wind through a cracked window. Maybe. But then, somewhere behind me, a door slammed shut. Slam! So loudly it echoed in the long corridor. I jumped and nearly dropped my flashlight. I ran. The beam of the flashlight bounced wildly across the hallway, illuminating broken lockers, piles of debris, and the cracked tiles that lined the floor. The hallway seemed to stretch unnaturally, twisting in ways it hadn't when I walked in. My own footsteps echoed, overlapping with the sound of my racing heartbeat. I reached the stairwell and thought I was finally safe. But at the top of the stairs, I froze. There it was, A figure hunched over, wearing a faded janitor's uniform. Its face was pale, almost waxy, and the eyes completely black, lifeless. Its head tilted unnaturally to one side, as if it had been waiting for me. My mouth went dry, and I couldn't move. I ran. I didn't even think. My hands scraped along the walls, my shoes sliding on the broken tiles as I tumbled down the stairs. When I dared to look back for a split second, the figure was gone. Just empty stairs, silent except for my own heavy breathing. I burst out of the wing and into the main hallway, chest heaving, hands shaking. I didn't tell anyone at first. Who would believe me, a second-year student claiming the old wing of a school was haunted? The principal later told me I probably imagined it, that the building had been sealed for years. But I know I didn't. Over the next few days, I learned more. The old janitor's carts were motion sensitive and had glitches. Motion sensors installed during the fire repairs, sometimes activated by floor vibrations, moving the carts and making doors swing. Some of the old doors were warped from years of neglect and slammed unpredictably. That explained the movement, the slamming, even the weird shadows cast by the flashlight. There was a logical explanation. Still, it didn't make me feel any better. Every time I walked past that wing on campus, my stomach sank. The hallways, the sounds, the way the broken windows reflected the light at night. It all felt like someone, or something, was still waiting there. And sometimes, when the dorm was empty and the campus was silent, I swore I could hear the faintest tap-tap-tap of footsteps echoing behind me, just out of reach. I never went back into that wing after that day. I stayed away from it, avoided taking shortcuts near it, and tried not to think about it. But even knowing the technical explanations, the experience left a mark. There's a part of me that will never feel completely safe near that hallway. Because even if it's just a cart, just warped doors and motion sensors, it still felt alive. Still felt like it was watching me. Still felt like it was waiting. I went to high school in Southern Illinois. This happened during my senior year, in the winter of 2019, a few months before graduation. Our school was pretty small, the kind where everyone knew everyone, and it was surrounded mostly by empty farmland. Because I was on the basketball team, we often stayed late after practice. The building itself was old, built in the 60s, and after dark, the place took on a completely different vibe. Dim hallways, echoing floors, and most of the lights turned off to save electricity. One Friday night after practice, I realized I had left my phone charger in my locker. Everyone else was already gone, including the coach. The janitor was usually the last one there, but he had locked up the gym and left earlier than usual. I figured I'd be quick, just in and out. When I walked down the main hall toward the locker room, the sound of my sneakers echoed way too loud. I don't know if you've ever been in a school building alone at night, but it feels wrong. Even though I knew the place inside and out, every corner felt unfamiliar. As I unlocked my locker, I heard a noise down the hallway behind me. It sounded like the squeak of sneakers on the tile floor. I froze. I thought maybe another player had forgotten something too, but when I turned around, the hall was empty. I grabbed my charger and told myself I was just tired and jumpy. But on my way back, I passed by the stairwell that led to the basement storage rooms. The door was cracked open, just a sliver. Normally, that door was shut tight. I don't know why I looked, but I stepped closer. That's when I heard whispering, faint, low voices coming from the basement. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but there were definitely two people down there. I backed away slowly, not wanting them to know I was listening. I thought maybe it was just some kids messing around, but the thing is, the basement was supposed to be locked at all times. By the time I reached the exit doors, the whispers had stopped. I pushed on the door hard, but it didn't budge. That's when I realized the main doors were locked from the outside. I had no choice but to head back toward the gym doors, which were on the far side of the school. As I was cutting through the hall by the cafeteria, I heard it again. Footsteps this time, not whispers. Someone was walking fast behind me. I spun around, and the hallway was empty. But a second later, the stairwell door slammed shut with a bang. That was enough for me. I sprinted across the building and shoved through the gym's side exit, which thankfully wasn't locked yet. I didn't stop running until I was halfway down the street. The next Monday, I casually asked one of the janitors if anyone had been in the basement Friday night. His face went pale, and he told me that no one had keys to that stairwell except the head custodian, who had been homesick that day. NHE admitted that sometimes doors in that building didn't latch properly. But when I asked about the voices, he didn't say anything, just shook his head. NTO this day. I don't know who or what I heard in that basement, but I never stayed late at the school again. I went to college in northern Pennsylvania. This happened in the fall of 2020, right when schools had reopened but still had a bunch of COVID restrictions in place. I was a sophomore then, living in one of the older dorm buildings on campus. It was the kind of place where the walls were thin enough to hear someone's phone vibrate 2 rooms down, and the pipes groaned all night like they were alive. I didn't have much money at the time, so instead of eating out, I'd usually head down to the basement kitchen in the dorm to cook late at night. Hardly anyone ever went down there. It was cold, damp, and the fluorescent lights flickered all the time. One Thursday night around midnight, I was making some ramen. My roommate was asleep upstairs, and I figured I'd eat quickly and then crash. While waiting for the water to boil, I noticed something odd. One of the lockers in the corner, used for cleaning supplies, was cracked open. Normally, that door was padlocked shut. I didn't think much of it at first, but when I walked over, I saw that the lock was still there. It had been snapped clean off. That's when I got the feeling I wasn't alone. I froze, listening. The basement was always quiet, except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional drip of the pipes. But I swear I heard faint breathing coming from deeper in the basement hallway. It was steady, controlled, like someone trying to stay quiet. I grabbed my ramen off the stove, even though it wasn't fully cooked, and backed toward the stairwell. As I reached the door, the breathing stopped. I thought maybe I was just freaking myself out. But the next night, when I went back down there, I found something that made my stomach drop. On the counter near the sink, someone had left a pile of neatly folded clothes, a hoodie, jeans, socks, and right beside it, there was an empty ramen packet, the exact same brand I always bought. I didn't tell anyone at first, but I started noticing little things in the days after. I'd wake up to find my backpack slightly unzipped when I knew I closed it. My box of granola bars would have one missing. At first, I thought maybe my roommate was helping himself, but when I asked him, he looked confused and swore he hadn't touched my stuff. The breaking point came a week later. It was around 3 a.m., and I woke up to the sound of someone moving in the room. I assumed it was my roommate at first, but when I rolled over, I saw him sound asleep. There was someone crouched by my desk. I didn't scream, I didn't move. I just froze. The light from the street lamp outside barely lit the outline of a man rifling through my drawer. He was thin, his hoodie hood pulled low over his face. I could hear him breathing. Then he turned his head toward me. We locked eyes for maybe a second, and then he bolted out of the room before I could even react. I woke my roommate up, and we called campus security. They searched the whole building and eventually found signs that someone had been living in the basement. A sleeping bag was hidden behind one of the old utility panels, along with food wrappers, water bottles, and even a student ID that had expired the year before. Apparently, it belonged to a guy who had dropped out when COVID hit, but never actually left campus. He'd been sneaking into dorms at night, stealing food and hiding during the day in the basement where no one went. Security told us he must have followed me a few times when I went down to cook late at night, which explained why I felt watched. The scariest part? They said he'd probably been slipping into our room more than once before we even noticed. After that, I never used the basement kitchen again.